I'm Jody Rogers from Jamf Software, and it is my great privilege to introduce Karl Gibson, who's flown here all the way from lovely Dublin, where the weather is exactly like it is outside. So how we were able to pull that off on his behalf, I don't know, but we have managed to do that. Karl Gibson from Adobe.
How you doing, everybody? Last session, everybody's happy. So as Jody said, my name is Karl Gibson from Adobe, and I'm the product manager of the enterprise IT tools. So it's great to be back at JNUC. I wasn't here last year, but we were here 2 years ago, I think it was. The bit that I love about JNUC is really the social aspect. I think it's really great for people to be around like-minded individuals. You get to ask the questions to each other that you always wanted to ask. You get to ask the questions to the speakers, the questions that have been really burning, like if a turtle loses its shell, is it naked or is it homeless?
Yes, is the answer.
These are
just
yes. Is it naked? Is it homeless? These are the burning questions. I hope you will be able to take out from here. I think it's a complicated question. I think there are a lot of things to it, and so maybe when you go back to the bar later on, this is what you should take out to the Minneapolis community. We won't get that one answered today, but hopefully the one that we will is, if the Creative Cloud is in the cloud, then how can it be deployed? Adobe has obviously gone through this massive transition. This year we're moving across to the Creative Cloud. And what does that mean for IT administrators such as yourselves? From a high level, what it means is probably more applications that you need to look after. It means more frequent updates. We now have feature-bearing updates. We have security updates. And so in the past, how many of your users have come up and asked for a security update? Very few, right? But now when users get wind of a brand new Photoshop feature that's coming out that's going to update their workflow, they're now going to be going to the IT administrator and asking when that update is going to come out. And so it's a new challenge, and that's really what we wanted to come out and speak to you about today, how we can simplify that process for you. How many people have heard of the enterprise IT tools at Adobe before? So the AMI tool?
Totally.
Awesome.
I've totally heard of it.
And so how many people would have access to the Creative Cloud versions of the applications? Not necessarily the Creative Cloud, but the applications themselves. Okay, so a few, okay. So we will be going over the Creative Cloud packages. So some of you who have access to those applications already will be familiar with the packager. For others, it will be a new concept. So that's what we're going to go over today. So we're going to talk about a little bit about how crazy it's been over the last year or so, the crazy train in Adobe. We're going to give a bit of an homage to Jody, and we're going to speak then about the Creative Cloud packager. We'll run through a demo, and then we'll speak about deploying and managing those updates, those feature-bearing and security updates. We'll give you guys a sneak peek of what we have on the roadmap. It's not quite there yet, but it's kind of what we're working on. And then we'll have a bit of time then for questions towards the end. So Jody Rogers.
I haven't died.
I didn't know the stage was going to be like this, and then it just seems more fitting for your eulogy that we have this type of stage. So many of you will be familiar with Jody. He joined Adobe in 2002 and recently left in August, and is now my Jamf buddy as a Jamf employee. So those of you who may not be familiar with Jody, just to give you a bit of background. So the IT admin community had been very vocal for a long time, essentially about how poor a job Adobe was doing for the IT admin, how they were helping with packaging up the software itself and deploying it out was a bit of a nightmare. And so people were asking for us to move across to MSI files, PKG files, these native installers, and for us to maybe offer the ability to have an internal Adobe update server. And I think it was somebody nabbed you at a conference and basically just kind of brow bashed you for about an hour about this. And Jody at that stage...
Yeah, they had I think the guy came up to me and he had one of these. This is a good prop. It's real, by the way. In case things get crazy, you know. Go ahead, sorry, Carl.
And so I think at that stage, Jody really didn't have, he wasn't in the role, he couldn't really influence it. But you know, taking from that, I think he really made it his aim and his priority to enhance the experience for IT admins. He was an IT admin himself, and he really kind of got this point that he really wanted to fix. And so when Jody got the
Mopping, I just mopped up the problem.
So when Jody came in in all his superhero glory and got the role of product manager for the IT tools, did you see you?
Oh, gosh. This is embarrassing.
So he came in and I think he really tried to fix what was going on. He had a lot of engagements with the IT admin. He started going to these conferences and reaching out to customers to see what it is that we could actually do. And so what we actually done is we brought out AMI, which was the Adobe Application Manager Enterprise Edition. And this took essentially what our proprietary RIBS installer and converted it into an MSI or PKG file that could then be deployed out. So essentially, at Adobe, we created a problem, and then we gave you a solution. But it has gotten better. I think the IT tools, under Jody's kind of leadership, really started to evolve from just solving a problem that we had created to actually adding real value, I think, to the IT admin community. And so in addition to AMI, Jody and the team brought out OST, which is the Adobe Update Server setup tool. So it's a tool that allows you to set up your own internal Adobe Update Server. And you can certainly see from the direction we're going with the Creative Cloud and what I mentioned about updates becoming more and more important in the workflow, how something like this will be a real benefit and more people are utilizing it. The team also brought out the Remote Update Manager, and I'll go through these tools in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. And then also XDA. So when we had all these tools, I think the IT admin community was quite happy for a while. So there's all you guys. I don't know if you're quite that happy with Adobe, but we like to think so. And everything was going really, really well. And then we brought out AMI 3.0, which those of you from education will be very familiar with. And this actually had an issue where it broke the ability to create clones of systems or use an imaging technology. And so people got quite angry with Jody again.
That was not a good time.
No. And so at that stage, Jody didn't leave. He wanted to fix it. And he did so with AMI 3.1. We released a fix for it that enabled the imaging workflow again, and the people rejoiced and were happy. Sorry?
This is his fantasy, just let it be.
Let it go. Yeah. I was told that's what you do when you're presenting. That's the way you're meant to visualize the audience. So. Strange thought. And so after AMI 3.1, Jody flew off, and now he's coming across to Jamf. But I think really what I wanted to demonstrate from this, not just to kind of evangelize Jody and kind of give you your eulogy on stage, but the fact that Jody has left Adobe, I don't think means that the voice of IT and the IT admin is now gone from Adobe. And it was very important for me to come here today and let all of you guys know that we're still the voice of IT in Adobe. We'll still try and push through as much as we possibly can. And when some of these crazy business decisions come our way, we'll try and push back and keep you in mind, essentially. So we're going to continue to do that.
Good. Thank you, Karl.
So I mentioned this crazy train in Adobe, and it all started last year, I think, essentially. So I wasn't here last year. This time last year, I was on a beach in Brazil on my honeymoon in a place called Buzios. No surprise that an Irish guy goes to a place called Buzios. But I was there and Jody was here, and he was presenting about what it was that we had in the pipeline at that time. And I don't think either of us really kind of foresaw what was going to happen in Adobe and all the changes that were going to be made. But when Jody was here, I think he got the biggest round of applause for two particular features that he had mentioned that we were going to deliver. And it was interesting to look back at Jody's session from last year when I was preparing for this to see what it was we were talking about at that stage, what was on the roadmap. And just to give you guys an idea of what it is, so this is Jody's session from last year. We don't have audio, do we?
Oh,
No.
you just want me to
Okay.
ad-lib and say
Yeah,
what I was
if
saying?
you could just reenact it again.
Did you tell them that you needed
No,
audio?
but it's
No.
fine. So really,
It's very animated. I don't know.
you are, yeah. So the first feature was about how AMI 4.0 was going to pull down applications directly from the cloud itself. You were no longer going to be reliant on physical media, and that got a round of applause. And then the next thing was around OST, was this integration of OST into the UI for AMI. We didn't, incidentally, do either of those things. But people were excited at the time. We did do different things, though. One of those features that we talked about bringing into AMI, we actually brought into the Creative Cloud Packager, and that's what I'm going to speak about in a minute. And so after October, the JNUC session, in November, I took over the IT tools from Jody. Jody actually had a different role for his last year or so in Adobe. So I've been looking after the IT tools since around October, November of last year. Adobe brought out Creative Cloud for Teams, which is very much focused on small teams, small business. Initially, it was envisaged for around 5 to 20 people. And then we started selling quite a bit of it to larger teams. And so we needed then a way to manage the deployment. And so we had a request essentially to create an IT tool specifically for this. And so we brought out the Creative Cloud Packager 1.0, which was originally focused for team customers. But it did offer that ability essentially to download the applications directly from the cloud itself. I think it was definitely the right route for us to go. And when we started looking at the enterprise requirements, we stuck with the Creative Cloud Packager because it's a tool for a new era, I think, in Adobe. And gone are the days of physical media, physical disks. So in June, we brought out the new CC branded applications. So normally, obviously, we would have a CS6, CS7 release. This time we went with Creative Cloud. We changed the moniker on the application. So you've got Photoshop CC and Design CC. And the only way to access them and get a hold of them is through the Creative Cloud itself. In July, then, we brought out the Creative Cloud Packager 1.1, which then added the support for enterprise customers. So the customers that are here who already have access to the CC applications would have been using Creative Cloud Packager 1.1 to actually obtain those applications. And then in October, which is where we are now, we're looking at doing a new release, which is the Creative Cloud Packager 1.3. And I'll be going through the details of what's actually contained in that update. I had hoped originally we had planned for it to go live today. It was pure coincidence, not just because of JNUC, but it would have been a good coincidence. But unfortunately, it's not going to go out today, but it will over the next probably week or two.
Because it's raining?
Yeah. I just got so annoyed. I was like, I'm not releasing a product today. I don't feel like it. So the Creative Cloud for Enterprise, what essentially is it from a high-level perspective? It's the apps predominantly. So we're still making those applications. That's still where the real value is in the applications themselves. As I said, it still means that you then need to be able to package them and deploy them. There is a couple of myths and a bit of confusion around the Creative Cloud. especially as it relates to IT. And so a couple of things to know is that the applications are still installed locally. The services obviously exist in the cloud, but the applications will still remain on the machines themselves. Sign-in is not required for enterprise customers. This was a big concern I think people had, is that we were going to force people to have Adobe IDs and sign into the applications, and that's not the case. It's still that the IT admin licenses on behalf of the user, and so the user does not have to sign in. And those in education, obviously, that would have been a high concern for. You don't want your students signing in, and some students can't legally do it if they're under a certain age. So that's not an issue. The second thing that people were worried about is that online connectivity would be required at all times. And again, this is not something that we've brought in. And so by using the Creative Cloud Packager and creating the package, those client systems can be offline, completely offline. If they are online, that's fine, but if they are offline, well, then it's not an issue. The licensing is not tied to it. The licensing is done by the IT admin when they're creating the package itself. Because this imaging is still possible, we haven't removed that as a workflow, as Jody did in 3.0. It is still possible.
It's
again,
not like
just
they did that on purpose. I'm going to take another picture of you.
Again, the services exist essentially in the cloud. So the likes of the shared storage, sync settings, all of those services exist in the cloud. And if you find value in them, well, then definitely it's there for you. But as the IT admin, I think it's important to go over those topics. And then, as we said, the additional value from the Creative Cloud is in the collaboration and sharing workflows, the training and support that you're given. And then we've got the license management and deployment that we're going to go over today. Okay. So how do Creative Cloud customers now obtain the applications? And so this has changed somewhat. And there was a couple of different workflows in the past, but now essentially there's two methods. So the first method is for individuals and team customers. They can use this in that they have the Creative Cloud desktop application. And this is kind of a revised version of AAM that we had, the Adobe Application Manager. We've revised it, we've integrated Behance, and we brought in a new UI so people can install applications and updates. They'll see everything from this central desktop application. They'll see everything that's going on. This is perhaps not what you want your users to be using. And so that's why I say it's a workflow for individuals and to a certain degree some team customers. But the vast majority would actually use the Creative Cloud Packager in order to obtain the applications themselves. So again, for enterprise customers, there's only the Creative Cloud Packager. The desktop application is really not a workflow that you want to use. It is disabled by default when you're creating your package in CCP. We disable the desktop application. If you wish, you can uncheck that box and you can deploy out the desktop application if you want your users to have access to install applications themselves and updates. That can be enabled, yeah. Jody Rogers.
Yes, I've got a question. So there's no media, there's no physical disks available at all, right? So that's one of the changes between the CS6 era and the Creative Cloud, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who have access to Adobe's licensing portal will understand how horrible experience it is.
Dude, you just said that out loud. Yeah. Sorry.
I was meant to say it in my head.
Yeah.
You try and do it on a Friday, so you'll forget about it over the weekend, and you'll be okay on Monday when you come back in. And so what we've done is we've actually removed your reliance on Adobe's licensing website. You do still need to go there, but only essentially to obtain the packager itself and to get your serial number. So as a Creative Cloud Enterprise customer, what you'll see when you sign into LWS is normally you would have seen all the different locales, you would have seen all the different applications, different versions, and trying to figure out what it was that you were actually meant to download was a challenge. And so now you essentially just see your serial number and you see the Creative Cloud Packager, and that's it. They're the only two things that you need to get. And so, as I mentioned, the Packager was a new tool specifically focused on the Creative Cloud. We wanted to move from this physical media aspect. I think somebody done an exercise before. If we released Photoshop CS5 on floppy disks, I think it would take 386 floppy disks. And so times have to move on. We've moved with them, and that's why we brought the Creative Cloud Packager out. The applications are downloaded directly from the cloud, and they're cached on the IT admin system. So if you're going to create another package with Photoshop and the bits haven't changed, well, then why should you download it again? And so that's actually cached onto the local system itself. So there's no LWS or physical media is actually supported in the Creative Cloud Packager. And it's available from the team admin portal, and it's available from Adobe's licensing website. But the Creative Cloud Packager doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of the enterprise IT tools. AMI is still there, and we haven't updated it, and there's no plans to update it. It's very much on the Creative Cloud Packager now. And then the other IT tools that we have, I mentioned the Remote Update Manager. So it gives you the ability to remotely invoke the Adobe Updater on a client system. We've seen a lot of people leverage Jamf Selfservice for this, where your users don't have the administrative privileges, but you want them to install, for instance, the Photoshop updates. You want them to come from either Adobe servers, or you want them to come from your internal Adobe Update server. You can make this available in a self-service policy for those users.
So I just want to say, the Remote Update Manager, that idea for that happened at JNUC. So I was at JNUC at one of the parties, and then somebody came up to me and said, hey, you know what would be great? And I was like, that would be great. And somehow I remembered the next day, and I wrote it down and brought it back to the engineers. So this is why it's so important to be at these events, and it's so awesome that Adobe has continued to come here and talk directly to the folks. So I just want to give a shout out
Absolutely.
to the fact that the community interacting with the vendors is super important. So
I'm really curious how many ideas you didn't remember the next morning. This could be a way better product.
Right, and some of them probably they had also acronyms that may or may not have been a drink like rum. I don't know. There was a margarita, I think. I don't know. Yeah.
So definitely, I mean that's a good point in that any ideas that you do have, this is definitely the opportunity to come up and speak with us either after the session or later on when we're grabbing a beer, and let us know, what is it in your workflow that we're not currently supporting. Like what would you like to see from us, and we'll definitely try and work on it. XDA then is the exceptions deployer application, and so some applications are not added to the main PKG file. They're added into an exceptions folder, and they need to be deployed out separately. The exceptions deployer application essentially allows you to kick all that off with just one command. So everything in the exceptions folder would be installed with the one command. Opti is used for provisioning, and so for instance, if you had a requirement to unserialize and reserialize with a different serial number, you wouldn't need to uninstall the applications. You would just use Opti, and that allows you to unserialize the applications without having to uninstall them. Customization wizard, the Acrobat customization wizard, gives you a lot more granular control over the settings that Acrobat has when it's pushed out. If you want to change registry entries, that type of thing, well, then you use the configuration wizard. And again, I think last year you had actually announced that it had just come out for the Mac, and so that's been out for a year now as well. So, and the last tool then is OST, and so that's that Adobe Update Server Setup tool. So this is a command line tool. It still is. Unfortunately, we haven't managed to bring it into the UI quite yet. So it is a command line tool, but essentially it can be run on any web server, IIS, Apache, any normal Mac it can be run on. And what it does is it actually hosts the updates for both Mac and for Windows. So the one server essentially does both. You don't need to have separate servers. Does anybody actually use OST in this room? Okay. Cool. Okay.
You want questions after?
Yeah, we'll do questions towards the end.
Oh, should I keep my questions? Yeah.
So they're essentially the enterprise IT tools. There is going to be some additions. We are going to make revisions of those. As I said, it's definitely a goal for us to get OST into the UI of CCP. That's definitely something that we're looking to do. And so I mentioned about how you actually get the packager itself. And so there's two methods. One is if you're a Creative Cloud team customer. I'm not sure if there is team customers here, but essentially you would go to creative.adobe.com. You would sign in. You'll see information about your team. I'm not sure if people have seen this UI before, but you see information about your team, the amount of storage that they've used. And on the right-hand side there is the IT deployment section, where you can actually download CCP for Windows or for Mac. And you'll see a link then to the help page as well. The old workflow was essentially that you would get AMI from probably a public site, the DevNet site. You go to LWS, you try and navigate which serial number it is that you're meant to be using. You try and figure out what DMG files you're meant to be downloading. And then once that, I mean, we don't make small files, I don't think. So once you downloaded it and then figured out that it was the wrong one, you had to go back to LWS. And then essentially you would point AMI at that media that you had downloaded, or if you had a physical disk, that's what you would point it at. And then you would deploy that out then using your JSS. The Creative Cloud Packager changes this slightly in that you would go to LWS, download the packager, you get your serial number, and then CCP itself actually downloads all of the applications directly from the cloud. It creates a package, and then you can then deploy that out. So it doesn't look like it's that much simpler, but it is. So I mentioned this is the dreaded LWS site. And so now when you go, essentially you go and you see your serial number, your Creative Cloud serial number, just one serial number. So you get that, and then you download the packager, install it. And the first thing you need to do then is sign in. So you select whether or not you're a team customer or you're an enterprise customer, enterprise, education, or government. And so you just sign in with a regular Adobe ID here. So it's just your regular ID. It's not something that's tied to a Creative Cloud account. And so you sign in. And then essentially you would enter in your license key. We validate that, and then you're brought then to the main screen where you get to create a package. And so you can package just updates. If you want to create an update-only package, well, then that's something you can do. You create the PKG file with just the updates that you select. And again, it's whether or not that's a security update or whether that's a feature update. It's entirely up to you what it is that you want to push out and when. So you go to create a package. And what you need to do then is just give it a name. It's like a design team. Select where it is that you want to save it to. You choose whether or not you want to package with a license or you want to package without a license. And then for Windows, you would pick 32 or 64-bit. It's not an issue for Mac. And then what we've done is those familiar with AMI would realize that we normally have a separate screen here where you would go in and change your configurations and customize your package. And we've actually selected the default settings there that we think are going to suit most people's environments, that will guarantee the success of your package as well. But if you wish, you can go and you can change that. So I mentioned you can disable the Creative Cloud desktop application. We do essentially turn off updates by default, but you can redirect them to your internal Adobe update server. And the other thing is we now add RUM into the package by default. And so this is deployed to your clients by default, but you can change that if you wish. It used to be a step that you needed to do afterwards. It's actually to put RUM on your client system. So we've now added it into the package itself.
This is new coming into the new versions?
No, it's already there.
Oh, it's in there. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And so I think the main thing to kind of point out is that we're still giving you the choice of how it is that you want to do this. We haven't taken any of that away, and it's not our intention to do anything like that. The idea is to add more granularity rather than less. And so that's why we're adding in stuff like RUM and giving you the choice whether to turn it on or off. The desktop application, again, giving you the choice of whether or not you want it or you don't want it. So then what we do is we pull in the applications from the cloud. So you put in your license key, and then we show you all of the applications then that you can actually create and package. And so this shows you the latest and greatest applications. So you'll see Photoshop CC, InDesign CC, and you can create those customized packages with just the applications that you want or the updates it is that you want. The other thing to note is that the Creative Cloud is language agnostic. And so unlike LWS, where you have to point out which media it is you want to download, here you essentially just select the language that you want to create the package in, and we'll pull in the bits in that locale it is that you want. So I think that is a feature I think that saves a lot of people a lot of time. And so once you've selected the applications that you want, you go then to create your package. We'll build it up, and then at the end you have these 3 items. So you've got your build folder, your exceptions folder that I mentioned, and then you have a .ccp file as well, which contains information about your package itself. And we're going to actually leverage that file in 1.3 as well. So when you actually expand out the build folder, and many will be familiar with this already, you have the install pkg file, which will normally be that Goliath, whatever it is, 8 gigs, 20 gigs, depending on the applications you added in. And then you have the uninstalled pkg as well. And so as you move through these different versions, we know it's been an issue in the past to actually remove the previous version. And so we actually create an uninstalled pkg file that you can use and push out to your systems before you lay down the new package. So I think it gives you that ability to control versions a lot easier. I did mention that in the preferences menu, what you can do is you can actually select where it is that the applications are cached to. And so perhaps it's not a good idea to have it on your main system itself. You don't want it taking up space. What you can do is you can actually just redirect that then onto a server or something like that, and then CCP will pull the cache from that nominated location. And you can purge then as well that cache if you wish. Make sense? Yeah?
Yeah, I get it.
And so I mentioned the feature-bearing updates. And so I think before there was this, well, it wasn't a perception, it was the case to a degree, in that we were this company that was perceived that only innovates every 24 months. And that's definitely changed in that we now give the product teams a bit more license to go ahead and release the features it is that they've been working on. So we're having multiple feature updates, a couple every few months, depending on the product. And so Photoshop has released brand new features. I think InDesign has released brand new features. And so customers are getting these a lot quicker. But it does put the IT admin in that position where how do you control access to those updates? When are you going to make them available? And the point to really make here is that the IT tools, all of them, so CCP, OST, RUM, all support those feature-bearing updates. And so if you wish, you can create a package with CCP that just contains the updates, and you can push that out if you wish. You can use an internal Adobe update server and have your feature updates there and your security updates there. And then you can have it go on cycle if you wish. If you have administrative privileges, it can go and do its 2 a.m. check and pull directly from your internal server. But it just reduces, I suppose, the level of control that you have. And then we've got RUM, which means then you can put it in the likes of Selfservice. With RUM, what you can do is you can specify that you want all updates that are available to come from Adobe servers and go ahead and install. Or what you can do is you can actually filter it by product. And so if you specify the LEID of the product itself, well, then you can just pull in Photoshop updates. One of the things that is currently not possible in RUM that I would ultimately like to see is the ability to specify which updates. And so you can say you want Photoshop updates, but they all come down, security, feature, everything. And so perhaps what we'll do with RUM is that we'll have the ability to specify the update itself. Whether it's you want to install just all security patches, or you want it to include the features then as well. Yeah. Okay. So this gives you an idea of the possibilities, but I think it's always better actually to see it in practice itself. And so if you take self-service, as I mentioned, you've now got more applications than you ever had before. So what you may want to do is actually just create these bundles and make them available through self-service. Let your users pick what it is that they want to do, or you can have your single application, so you can just put Acrobat there in self-service if you wish. Or what you could do is you could just have the updates. So I mentioned you can leverage RUM, and so you can leverage that from here, or you could just have the PKG file that you created with CCP and just allow your users actually to install the Photoshop updates themselves.
This looks really familiar, Carl.
Should.
This is an actual screenshot from the Jamf's self-service. So Bryson actually created this, and so this is how we use the Creative Cloud at Jamf through self-service. So this is not a mock-up. This is a screenshot that I sent him, and it's appeared in the presentation. Yeah, I guess I didn't clear his slides, so yeah, totally fine. Go.
So the Creative Cloud Packager 1.3 is the next release that we're going to do. As I mentioned, we're hoping that it will come out in the next couple of weeks. And what this is going to do, the main features essentially is, as part of the Creative Cloud, you get access to not just the latest and greatest, but you also get access to previous versions. And so at the moment, Creative Cloud Packager just shows you the latest. But what we're going to do in 1.3 is add support for the previous versions. And so if you wish, you can select this Show Archived Versions, and then you'll see down the bottom it actually pulls in a list then of the archived versions beginning with CS6. And you can create a package then that contains Photoshop CC and InDesign CS6. If that's what your users were using, well then you have that flexibility to do it. Or you could have Photoshop CC and Photoshop CS6 on the same system as well, especially in education. I think you may have it that some curriculum has moved on to the newer version, others haven't. They've remained with the previous version, so this gives you that flexibility, I suppose.
That's cool.
The next thing that we're doing is we're adding support for native installers. And so when you go to Adobe's licensing website, right now, essentially you would see a Creative Cloud Packager and the native installers. And so Adobe does occasionally produce native installers. And so they were available on Adobe's licensing website, and you had to download them separately and deploy them out. With this new version, we're actually bringing in support for those native installers. And so if you're on the Mac, you will see Edge Code, Edge Reflow, and they'll be added into the main PKG file as well. So I think that's going to save people a lot of time as well. We're going to support proxy pack files on the IT admin system as well, if you're behind the proxy server. We're going to have a new uninstall utility. It actually occurred to me a while ago that we didn't give you a method to uninstall the Creative Cloud Packager. I don't know if that's just pure confidence, that you just have no need to remove it. So we did rectify that, and now when you download CCP, you actually get an uninstall utility as well, which will remove the Creative Cloud Packager if for some crazy reason you didn't want it on your system, and also AMI as well if it's present there. I mentioned Remote Update Manager. We've added in the support for the feature-bearing updates now. In the past, Run would just support the security updates, and now it supports those feature-bearing updates. So that's what we have planned for the 1.3 release. We're pretty much good to go on it. We did do a pre-release a while ago. I'm not sure if anybody here had used that pre-release. Quick show of hands. Nobody, okay. The pre-release went really well, probably because nobody tested it. But it went really well. I think we're good to go, so we're just waiting on word from Adobe to agree to actually get this out. And so what else do we have beyond Creative Cloud Packager 1.3? So there's a lot of things that we've been working with, looking at and brainstorming. One of the things is, I mentioned these updates and the feature-bearing updates. Now that we're doing more and more releases, it's becoming very difficult to figure out when we're updating, what we've updated. I think at the moment we just have a blog that's run by Adam Pratt, Sales Enablement. And he essentially just goes and just, Photoshop has released a new update, this is what's contained in it, and that's just on a blog. To me, it doesn't really fit in with the vision that we have for the Creative Cloud, that we're still notifying IT admins through this blog. And so what we're actually looking to do is have update notifications on the system that has Creative Cloud Packager. Again, it's something you'll be able to turn on or turn off, but we want it essentially to pop up and let you know that Photoshop has 14.2.2 has been released, and you can click there and you can select then to add it to your package, and you'll get a little bit more information as well. So I think that's going to be a good feature. The other thing that we're also looking to do in the next release is actually add in support for editing an existing package. And so those familiar with AMI will be aware that you can modify an existing package. When Creative Cloud Packager came out the door, because of time constraints, we couldn't actually get that feature in. And so now we're going to add it in. So that .ccp file that I mentioned, so now you're going to be able to actually go in and modify and add updates to it or add applications to it. So it's always the latest file that you're essentially pushing out. The other thing that we're doing as part of this workflow is actually showing you what packages you created in the past as well. And so whether you're doing it for Mac or whether you're doing it for Windows, you'll actually see what your package history was and what you added in. The other thing, and this elusive OST integration into CCP or AMI, this is what we are going to do. I think it's going to be just after Christmas. We're going to try and take up the work and really start developing it and have it so that people can just go in. They can configure OST, whether it's the initial sync that you're setting up on your server or whether it's an incremental sync that you're doing and you just want it to refresh. You'll have that ability in CCP. And then hopefully as well the ability to specify individual products as well that you actually want to have updated on that OST server. I think at the moment essentially what happens is you pull in all of CS5 products, all of CS6 products, and now CC products. And so storage is definitely becoming an issue on that OST server. So the ability to select just the products it is that you actually want to have hosted there is something that we're looking to do as well. Okay. So
What the hell?
I thought it was cool. So we have a bit of time to pick mine and Jody's brain. I'm not sure. But yeah, so we're going to have some time to do that. So if you have questions, well, then let us know, and then we'll do a quick recap then towards the end. So, yeah.
Is Captivate going to be part of this at all?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So is Captivate going to be part of Creative Cloud Packager? It already is. And so if you have a Captivate or a Presenter license key and you put it into Creative Cloud Packager, we show you Captivate and Presenter, and you can download it and package it up there. It's not part of your main package, which is a bit of an issue. It's just because Captivate and Presenter are not technically in the Creative Cloud. But we do have that ability to download directly from the cloud those versions, and you can create a package with it and deploy it out. Yeah.
Is there any chance you would move the plugin updating to this system as well?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. The question was, is there, can we move? Is it the?
Or even not even necessarily move, but to add updating the plugins, Shockwave, Flash, Air,
In order to get them captured,
we got the updates from our internal Adobe update server.
Yeah, it's something that we would like to do. I suppose the Flash team and Air team have always kind of gone and done their own thing, which is a challenge. But it is something that we would like to do. And I know obviously you've got the scope catalogs for SECM, but that's you're going to add.
The next question, I'm going to hand you the mic. So this one's easy.
Hi there. Just this is kind of not your problem, but some of those workflow management tools like K4, do we have any idea how that's going to work with this or whether it's going to work with this? Like I said, not your problem. It's kind of their using your products, but I can't get to this until until it works, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely something that we can sync up and talk about after this to see what it is in that workflow that you require from us. We would like to have, as we move into the Creative Cloud, I suppose, a greater level of integration with the likes of Jamf's APIs and that type of thing. But yeah, we can think about it after.
I've got two quick questions. Is Lightroom going to be included in this? Because I know right now it's separate.
Lightroom is included in it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already there. So you'll see Lightroom 5 in there when you go in. You won't see 4, but you'll see 5. It's not marked for an archive version, but it is already there.
Okay. And then can you run the packager alongside the AMI version 3? Because I know you couldn't run AMI version 2 next to version 3. And that was kind of a hassle.
Yeah, you can. We fixed that problem when Jody left.
It wasn't my problem. I didn't make that happen.
Sorry, I'm just gives me an opportunity to have a dig. Yeah, it was an issue. It was really around the way AAM was on the system itself, but you now can have AMI and CCP on the same system. Is there so much of a requirement once we bring in the support for archived versions? I don't know, but it is possible, yeah.
Is the remote update manager meant to update all of the applications? Because I've been using this for a while now, and I'm finding the Acrobat Pro doesn't update using Update Manager. It keeps telling me it's up to date, but it's only at 11.0.
Yeah, we add Acrobat in with that group with Flash, who just do their own thing. It's not currently supported in RUM. Muse is the same. The idea is to add those products in when we can. But yeah.
Have you any time frame for that?
No.
It's on the Acrobat tip. But, this is all Creative Cloud, right? Aside from the enable prior versions that you mentioned. But in the way that AMI packaged, say, the whole suite, let's say CS6, Acrobat did not honor the suppress updates. That is everyone's experience, right?
The updates should be disabled in Acrobat when you suppress them.
Okay, because I'm finding that it's not, and I'm just wondering, was I holding it wrong, or, but so it didn't do that, and it also didn't get its update. So I'm assuming that Acrobat being its own.
Yeah, they should be disabled.
Okay.
Did you use the configuration wizard as well as CCP, or?
No, it wasn't
or as
CCP
AMI,
because we're
sorry.
not. Yeah, it was AMI. I figured I'd chalk it up into that, but it didn't have the version or updates, and we just did a major deployment. So I just figured that was
Okay.
probably configuration.
We can look into why
Okay.
it's not. And so the idea is that you want them disabled,
Yeah,
but
I
they're
mean-
not at the moment, and you've already deployed essentially.
Right, we went ahead and deployed, and then users were eventually greeted with, "Hey, it's Acrobat X, not
Yeah.
Acrobat 10, so not 11." But that was one little rub to a fairly successful deployment otherwise. So I just
There's definitely a solution that we can do without you having to remove what you've already deployed essentially.
I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but like our various departments in the company, they're very eager to use CC, so they went all out and bought their own license. So is there any tools or methods or practices to sort of figure out how many licenses and what they are and trying to consolidate it so we could get the CCP?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely leverage Jamf from that regard. You can also query the ISO tags that are on the machines itself, which will tell you what it's been licensed with, if it's Creative Cloud Enterprise or not.
Is there a distinct difference between the software ID tags between the Creative Cloud for Teams and Creative Cloud for Enterprise?
It's recognized that it is Enterprise versus Team. Yeah.
Okay, it actually has it in a software ID tag.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so you could distinguish between that.
There's a script on Jamf Nation that will pull that information in that as an EA.
I was just saying that there's a script on Jamf Nation that you can deploy that will bring that in as an extended attribute.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. You already had 2 questions, man. And where's the people over here with the questions? Wait, all the way up there. Hold on.
So I just wanted to make him walk. No, seriously. So when I'm looking at this and I'm going, everybody in this room is repeating this process over and over and over and over again. And I think that since both of you are in your respective companies now, that I personally would appreciate you guys looking at, building this same wizard into the web interface in Casper, so that, we're caching those packages that we've set up directly in the JDSs and not having to worry about, am I pushing this to my desktop server? Am I doing that thing or the other thing? Did I not hold it right or whatever to get this particular package in here? That would be extremely helpful for us.
Cool. Hey, Everett. Okay.
It's concerning Acrobat, and it's. I was wondering if it's more fully integrated. What I mean is that very often it's going to lose its registration, and oftentimes we have to reinstall the whole suite just because it won't launch. And I have a short suggestion afterwards.
Yeah. I can imagine what the suggestion is. The Acrobat licensing has always been a little bit finicky. It has in the way that it needs to be deployed as well, and that you need to push it out first, and then you need to push out then the CCP package, which essentially licenses then Acrobat with the Creative Cloud Enterprise license. There was an issue, or there is an issue around Acrobat at the moment, especially when it's used as part of an imaging workflow. So if Acrobat is there and the Creative Cloud applications are there, and then you image it, there's an issue then where Acrobat loses its license. I'm not sure if you've experienced that directly, but that is one of the things that we're addressing in CCP 1.3, and that will fix it. But I wouldn't like to say that we've fixed all of the licensing issues with Acrobat. We do try our best, and we know that it can be an issue. But
And the suggestion I have is that it would be nice now that Adobe will have a reliable source of income, that they start looking into servers, because in the enterprise world, we work off servers. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Carl.
Tell me.
Other questions? Get this guy back.
With just a question about enterprise and the cloud services. So is it possible to basically disable all cloud services and run like a CS6 style but with a CC version? With the enterprise side, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because essentially when you deploy out, if you're not online, you're not going to avail of any of those services. The other thing is essentially, in order to use shared storage, in order to use sync settings, you need to sign into the application. It needs to be aware essentially of who you are and validate it against a Creative Cloud account. If you're using this method of using a license key in CCP, well then that's not happening on the client. So essentially all of those cloud services are not present. So you're just using the application, and that's it. We are a lot more transparent as well in the ports that the software tries to access. And we have a document that's online now which will give you all of the ports that we use and what it's being used for. I think before we weren't as transparent as we should be.
Does that, just quickly, sorry, if we're not installing that Creative Cloud software on the client, does that mean that all the menus in CC won't, or those cloud menus won't exist? Or like any saving options or any of that sort of stuff?
It doesn't disable those prompts for the services, essentially. So if it's in the Photoshop UI and you package with Packager, we will have the updates disabled. But anything else that's in the UI that points to the cloud would be there.
Can I request that as a feature?
You absolutely can.
And are you from Australia? Yes, sir. Yeah, so just to clarify, Chip said that earlier today that there was 6 continents represented and that Australia was not. That was he meant Antarctica. Clearly there's folks from Australia. Now, who's managing the Macs in Antarctica? I have no idea. There was another question.
I had a quick question just about whether or not flat packages would be an option in the future.
Yeah, it's something that we really want to do. And I know it's not the answer you want to hear. It seems like there's a lot of stuff that we're trying to do. But it is essentially a technical issue that we're trying to overcome before we can do it. But ultimately, that's the way we want to move. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Oh. Are you pointing at him? Oh, okay.
Do the packages made with the Creative Cloud work off an SMB share? Don't say no. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Next question.
Is there any way to report with RUM what updates are available on a particular machine?
So if you execute RUM, you want the client to show?
Like I want to report, like if, run in the background, just tell me is there a Photoshop update available for that machine so I can know that it needs to be updated? without actually just running and see what happens.
Versus having it on the IT admin system? Like, would you want that to happen on
Correct,
each
like I
client?
can do with the Apple Software Update tool, I can see what updates are available.
But ideally, you want to run that on the IT admin system
No, on
versus
the client.
on a client system
Yeah.
itself. So the user would see.
So I would know that there's a Photoshop update for that particular machine.
So what's that, sorry?
And compare that against what, though?
Well, what I'm saying is if he could run utility and get the information, then he would be able to store it in the JSS, much like we can for Apple updates. I couldn't hear either one of them.
You'd have to update your extension attribute constantly.
Well, on an inventory basis, sure.
So is the idea that the user would be aware of what applications?
I would know that, okay, I've got machines that need this update, so I would know that there's, okay, I've got 7 machines that need a Photoshop update, so I need to go make sure that happens, or, you know, if there's a machine that's really out of date, that kind of thing.
And how do you want it ultimately to be reported back? So
Back into the JSS. It could be an extension attribute like I'm doing with the Apple Software Update that will tell me there's an iTunes update, the same kind of thing. That would be nice. And then for the server side, for the update server, is there a tool yet to kick off an update automatically on a schedule, or is that still a manual or some other way of doing that?
It can be made automatic now. So we released OS 3.0 around the same time as CCP 1.1. And we essentially have recompiled the code, but you can set up a cron job or something like that, essentially, just to kick it off now. So yeah, that can absolutely be done. And the idea then being that we would have that in CCP where you can specify if you want it automatic or you want it to be manual. But I hadn't conceived of essentially the scenario you're speaking about with RUM, and so if it is something that there's value in, well then absolutely we'll have a look at it.
Chris, how are we doing on time? 3 minutes? Okay.
There's one over here as well, Jody.
I was wondering if you could speak to the reliability of Creative Cloud when it's sunny.
I don't know where it's
I walked
that.
all the way up here for that. Where's the other one?
There's one question just there, and then we'll just finish up and recap.
Hey, it's Ben.
Sort of 2 related questions. After the breach, we've heard a bunch of users having problems logging in, and we're trying to determine if there's an actual problem with the password resets institutionally, or it's mostly user error, and they're confused. And secondarily, were there any serial numbers that were invalidated, or they should all, say for CS55 and CS6, or should they all still be valid?
The serial numbers will still be valid. They haven't been invalidated.
And the password resets, we can't really tell if it's user error or there are other issues on the password resets, but we're getting sporadic reports of people having problems resetting.
These are applications that have already been licensed and are now throwing up the sign-in screen?
I'm still trying to gather information, but there was a spike. I mean, there would be a spike anyway because there are a zillion password resets, but it's a little, it's always a little hard to determine when there's a spike, whether or not it's likely to be user error or not.
Yeah, we're not tracking it as an issue that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But definitely if you want to kind of give us more detail, well, then we can certainly see if it is an issue.
I like that we were in the 99% pass through this talk when somebody finally brought up the security breach. Yeah. I will say this, my personal opinion on that is that Brad Arkin, this chief security officer at Adobe Systems, I've worked with him in the past with issues. Him and his team are fantastic, and I have full confidence that they will secure any holes that are that can be found. His organization is super on top of things, so I will say that unsolicited. I'm going to pass this back over to him, but I forgot to say thank you, Adobe Systems, for the sponsorship for JNUC. It's folks like Adobe that help put this event on and make it free for the users. So thank you, Adobe Systems, for that.
Sure. So a couple of resources then just to make people aware of the help page for the Creative Cloud Packager. We've redesigned this. There used to be a deployment guide that was 170 pages. We again took the opportunity to shorten that. So that's the site for that. We've got our blog that we frequently use to announce updates, the pre-release. And then we have our forum as well, where you can go and enter in any issues that you're having, see if the community is seeing it. But also that's tracked by myself and the OMI team or CCP team as well. So that's a good resource to go to. And the final thing then as well is just our Twitter account. And what we're going to do is we're going to give away 2 12-month memberships to Creative Cloud. And so essentially we'll just, if you subscribe to us, we'll take it out at random and notify you tomorrow. Okay? All right, thank you everybody.